Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 0 of Raider Zone, the podcast, here, courtesy of 91.1 WRMU and Raider Student Media, bringing back the podcast where we'll just be talking about sports for the next few minutes here. My name is Jacob Buttar, sports director here at 91.1 WRMU and Raider Zone, the podcast. Really the only alumni guy right now because it's been a couple years since we've done this. I'll let the other two that are here with me today kind of introduce themselves.
All right, everybody. I'm Kris Jacoby. I went to Carrollton High School. I'm a first year here at Mount Union University. I'm a sports writer for Right Down Euclid, and I'm a student assistant for the football team. So, you know, life is good. Go Durs, baby.
Recruiter.
Top recruiter, Kris Jacoby. All right, I am Tom Dry. I'm Pittsburgh born and raised. Not really, but I claim it. Let's go. Go Steelers, go Penguins, go Pirates, hail to Pitt. Let's go, babies. Go Durs.
Yeah, let's go, Durs, and let's get into it here where we're going to talk about – today we got really two sports we're going to talk about, gentlemen. We're going to talk about the NFL a little bit here, and then we're going to talk about the NBA. First, we're going to get into the NFL. It's getting down to the nitty-gritty of things right now. We got the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship game this weekend. Taking a look now, we'll talk about the AFC Championship here first. Big time matchup. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to be traveling up to Baltimore, Maryland to take on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, the Ravens 3.5-point favorites. Gentlemen, kind of some predictions on the game. What are you guys thinking?
So for this game, you know, it's hard to go against Patrick Mahomes, the greatest quarterback the league has seen since Tom Brady, prime Tom Brady. Let me be specific there. But like you said, the Ravens opened up at negative 3-point favorites because they have the MVP, Lamar Jackson. That defense was the best in the league this year. Number 1 scoring defense, number 1 defense in takeaways. At the end of the day, my quick prediction, I think I'm going to go with Kansas City covering the spread because I think Patrick Mahomes will get the job done. He's done it before, and I just don't trust the Ravens yet to make a Super Bowl run.
So what do you think the score will be of the game?
Score prediction. I'm going to say 30-24 Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay. Very good prediction. Tom, send it over to you.
You know, as a Steeler fan, I'm not a Baltimore guy. But regardless of that, I'm going Chiefs this week. I think, like Kris said, you know, it's hard to bet against Mahomes any day of the week. And, you know, I think final score, I'll go 27-24 Chiefs.
Yeah, you guys are kind of going on the same wavelength. I'm thinking, really, at the start of the playoffs, I had false hope. Kris and I are both Cleveland Browns fans. Thought maybe the Brownies can make a little run. Go ahead, Tom. I know you got something to say.
Boo.
It's okay. But at the end of the day, in the back of my mind, too, Kansas City Chiefs, let's face it, guys, they didn't really have a great regular season by their standards, especially. There's a lot of stuff in the media, you know, Taylor Swift, everything about that. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs are Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is Kansas City as well. He's the greatest quarterback, the most talented quarterback. I'm just going to say that right here that's ever played in the National Football League. He's not got the greatest career yet. Tom Brady's the GOAT. He's going to be the GOAT until somebody passes up on his accolades. But Patrick Mahomes, really, he's the most talented quarterback that I've ever seen. Lamar Jackson, I don't trust Lamar Jackson still. He played good last week. He really did, but I still don't trust him in the big game. And Patrick Mahomes has been in the big game every single year of his career. So I got Kansas City too. I think that they're probably going to win this one. It's going to be a little bit lower scoring, 21-17. I don't really think that Lamar Jackson is going to get that offense going very much. That Chiefs defense is legit, guys. That's what I firmly believe.
I mean, L'Jarius Sneed on the outside has been arguably the most underrated cornerback in football this year. He just allowed his first touchdown on the year last week. So, I don't know. It will be a good game. I truly believe the Chiefs will come out on top, but I just haven't seen enough out of Lamar in the playoffs like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Lamar, he's a perennial talent, in my opinion. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks this league has seen. I'll say that as a Browns fan because his dual threat ability. But, yeah, Chiefs on top at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's important to note that Lamar and the Ravens, they're getting Mark Andrews back for the game, which could definitely be big for their passing attack. But I still just firmly don't believe, like how you said, L'Jarius Sneed's a good guy to point out there. Chris Jones up the middle, too. I mean, Baltimore's going to try to run the ball. That's what their identity is. I don't think they're going to run the ball that well, I should say, over the Chiefs. Now, I just firmly believe in Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes, I'm convinced he could be down about 30 points, guys, and he could come back if it's a playoff game, if need be, just because that's the type of guy that he is. So
you can talk to Deshaun Watson about that one when he was in Houston. That big comeback there by the Chiefs. Well, I remember that. That was just about 4 years ago, I believe,
Yeah.
in the divisional round.
Yeah.
So
A quick tidbit there about the Ravens season. There's only one team to beat them twice, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
the last game was against backups, I believe.
A win's a win.
The last team to beat Lamar Jackson was the Cleveland Browns.
This is
going to
the-
make that clear.
This is the NFL. A win is a win.
I agree. A win is a win. But at the end of the day,
Go Steelers.
nah, you ain't about to say go Steelers on this podcast. It's ran by a Browns fan.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a win will be a win.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that Patrick Mahomes is going to get that victory this week. Don't ever underestimate the guy. I think he's already proven that even with just the AFC Championship run. A lot of people even thought he might lose to the Dolphins in the wild card round. Then take a look now. It's Patrick Mahomes. He is the most talented quarterback. He's on his way to potentially being the GOAT if he keeps up what he's doing. We'll take a look now at the NFC Championship game, guys. So, Detroit Lions, great story. Really, their first time being relevant, I think, is one easy way to put it. For the first time in well over 30 years, they're back in the NFC Championship game. They're playing in San Francisco at the 49ers. Brock Purdy and those San Francisco 49ers are opening as a 7.5-point favorite. I don't know about the spread here, but I want to hear your guys' takes here on what you guys think this game's going to be.
Well, the 7.5-point favorite for San Francisco, that's a pretty big favorite. I mean, Detroit has been a wonderful story this year. Jared Goff has really turned his career around in Detroit. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown there on the outside. Then my favorite player on the Lions has been Jahmyr Gibbs. He's useful out of the backfield, just not as a running back, but as a receiving back as well. He's electric, dynamic. And for this game, I want to make my prediction right now. I think Detroit is going to the Super Bowl. I think Detroit is going to get it done. I think Detroit is going to cover the spread. Brock Purdy's going to get wiped down there by Aiden Hutchinson. It's going to be Detroit all day. I'm going Detroit, let's say 28-24, Detroit Lions.
Okay. Tom?
I think this is arguably one of the best matchups you could have going in the NFC Championship game when you break it down. I got to go Detroit. I paid a visit up there to Detroit earlier this year, not for a football game, but for a concert. And, you know, the vibe of the city was just, you could tell. There's a mystique about it, right? There's a mystique. When you have a team that hasn't done anything in 30 years, and they instantly go to the top. Not the top, but they're close to the mountaintop. You can sense it, right? This is a team that has not just a whole city, but a state behind it. That and when you think about the fact that Dan Motor City Campbell is one of the best coaches in the NFL. It's hard to bet against them. No disrespect to Kyle Shanahan. But, man, I'd want to play for Dan Campbell any day of the week.
So you got the Lions. What's the score prediction there, do you think?
Score prediction? Oh, man. You know, I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think Jared Goff's going to have to finally break his streak of losing against the 49ers. I think he's going to have to take them down, drive them down the field, set them up for a game-winning field goal. I'm going to go 31-28.
Okay. First off, shout out Jared Goff. I mean, just think about it, guys. Matthew Stafford trade a couple years ago. I still think the Rams probably won the deal just because they got a Super Bowl out of it. I mean, you won the deal. But Jared Goff's kind of thrown in there as like throwaway at that point. But at the same time, he's now revitalized his career, and I'm very happy for him because I firmly believed when he was traded at the time that he wasn't as bad as what the media was kind of depicting him as, and he's kind of proven that here in Detroit with really just an incredible year. Chris has got it pulled up now on the screen. He's thrown for over 4,500 yards this year, 30 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Just a great year for Jared. And, of course, he's got great targets, particularly Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I like the Lions' offense a lot. But, guys, I really think that the San Francisco 49ers have the foundation here. And, really, it's just been great for San Francisco all year long. Brock Purdy, I firmly believe if Brock Purdy was healthy last year, that it would be the 49ers in the Super Bowl last year instead of the Philadelphia Eagles if he doesn't go down with the injury. And I don't care what people say about Brock Purdy throwing the checkdowns. He can throw checkdowns all day if that means Christian McCaffrey's going to take it to the house or Deebo Samuel's going to take it to the house. George Kittle. And that defense is legit for San Francisco too. I love the story from Detroit, and I think Detroit is going to be relevant for many years to come because I think Jared Goff still got a lot of good football in him. Aiden Hutchinson, I think, can evolve into one of the best defensive players in the NFL. I already think he's one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And I like what you were saying, Chris, about Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is an incredible running back. And I was kind of critical when he was drafted as early as he was, but Now he's obviously paying off. I still think, though, that San Francisco, the experience of Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy's a winner. I mean, you could say whatever you want about Brock Purdy, but he knows how to win football games in the NFL. I think that the 49ers are going to win a very close game over Detroit, 30-24, rematch for a Super Bowl from a couple years ago, where it's going to be San Francisco and Kansas City for me. And I think that would be a great Super Bowl.
It's been a decade. Over a decade. 11 years. Man.
Over a decade for what?
What?
That last Super Bowl matchup.
No.
You're thinking 49ers-Ravens. That's the 49ers-Ravens. I'm talking 49ers-Chiefs.
My bad.
Chiefs
2019. My memory's a little
years ago.
foggy. I played ball. I may have a little bit of CTE. A little Antonio Brown.
You're just Antonio Brown's cousin.
Yeah, and Chandler Jones.
All right, we're going to have to change the topic there.
Yeah. We'll look into it here now. Chris has got it pulled up. Chris is our computer monitor man here, but as a recap, though, from that last segment here, first off, I've got the 49ers and the Chiefs. So we're not in agreement necessarily on the NFC champion, but the AFC champion, we're all in agreement here. You gentlemen got Chiefs, Lions. I think one thing's for certain, whatever Super Bowl matchup we're going to get, it's going to be an incredible matchup within 2 weeks.
I 100% agree with that. Electric teams, electric atmosphere. I'm excited. Vegas, baby. Super Bowl in Vegas. And I'm calling my shot right now. The 2025 Super Bowl in New Orleans. Cleveland Browns are winning it, baby. Let's go. Nick Chubb, he's coming back. We're getting T. Higgins. We're getting everybody. We're getting this roster loaded out. Jimmy Haslam's writing those checks. He's paying it out. Browns 2025 Super Bowl champions.
The Steelers are gonna hire Gerard Johnson as their offensive coordinator, and we're gonna cook you guys every year for the next 5 to 6 years at least. KP's gonna cook.
All right. we will get in on the next segment here that Chris has got pulled up for us on the monitor here. We're gonna talk now about some of the top NFL free agents. It's not too early to really be talking about these free agents, as really there's just 4 teams left. 28 teams already making those free agency plans. So taking a look now, we're going to go over just a couple of these top free agents where we think is going to land. So first off, let's go Chris Jones, Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, Chris Jones, I think he's going to re-sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. A player his caliber is hard. It's hard to replace. In Kansas City, I think they're just going to have to break out the checkbook, figure out a way. If they have to restructure some contracts, they'll go ahead and get him. But like I said, I don't know. I do believe he'll go to the Chiefs, but I do not know what his contract will exactly look like. I know he wants to be the highest paid defensive tackle in all of football. As you can see here, he was franchise tagged this past offseason for $33 million, which perhaps will help him test the open market for the first time in his career. But for my contract prediction, I'm going to say he gets roughly $36 million a year on about a 2 to 3 year deal. And he resigns with the Chiefs, obviously.
That's a crazy cap hit for a defensive tackle. But I mean, when you consider the fact that a franchise tag is $33 million, that's also kind of crazy. But I do agree. I do think Chris Jones remains a Chief. I think he's too important to pass up. The Chiefs just aren't the same without him up front. And I mean, really, that's where every play starts, up front in the trenches. That's the most important part of every single play. You got to get to the quarterback every time, and you got to defend the run. And he's one of the best in the league at it.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement here, guys. I got Chris Jones going to the Chiefs. I can't see him in any other uniform other than a Kansas City Chiefs uniform. I was kind of surprised last year that they didn't pay him. I don't think they're going to make that mistake this year. I think he's going to get the bag this offseason. But now, taking a look at the next guy that we're going to talk about here, Kirk Cousins. So this is an interesting one. Say what you want about Kirk Cousins, but this season he was having really just a great season for his career, helping out his free agent worth until, of course, he came down with a big-time season-ending injury. It doesn't look like it's going to be career-ending, but, guys, he is getting up there in age. He's 35 years old, coming off a big injury. Be curious to see how Kirk performs, but through the season, he did have 2,331 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a 103.8 QB rating. So definitely a good season there from Kirk. And obviously, we saw what the Vikings were without him. Minnesota struggled at the quarterback position. They started a bunch of different starters like Josh Dobbs, Jaron Hall, Nick Mullins. So didn't have much stability there. So I think Kirk Cousins has some value. I'm curious to hear, though, what you guys think. Where's Kirk going to land?
I think he's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in this league, one of the most disrespected quarterbacks. In 4 of his 6 years with the Minnesota Vikings, he's registered a 100 or higher quarterback rating, and he's thrown for 30-plus touchdowns 3 times, and he seems to have an average of a completion percentage of roughly 67%. So he's one of the most efficient and effective quarterbacks, as he's thrown for over 4,000 yards 8 times in his career. But as for he will land, I don't know if Minnesota will bring him back. I think Justin Jefferson wants him back. They have a great connection. Jefferson's about to get the bag, though. He's expected to make roughly $34 million a year to become one of the highest paid wide receivers in the National Football League. But for my prediction for Kirk Cousins, I'm going to say he signs with the Atlanta Falcons. They need a quarterback. They're wanting to make a playoff push. I say it's a short 2-year deal worth about $30 million a year, with incentives worth up to $40.
You know, I don't want to beat a dead horse too much, but like they said, Kirk Cousins is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in all of football. I don't think the Vikings bring him back, but I like the pick of him going to the Falcons. I wouldn't rule out him going to the Patriots or a reunion with the Commanders. I mean, they all need quarterbacks desperately. So I would keep an eye out for that.
I mean, I can see him going personally. Atlanta was the first team that came to my mind too, because I think Atlanta's in a unique situation where they have, I don't want to say a win now roster, but they have a lot of talented young guys on that team that can definitely help them win. And we're going to talk about new NFL head coaches here in a second, but Raheem Morris, he was just hired as the Atlanta Falcons' new head coach. If he can figure out how to use Kyle Pitts properly, Kyle Pitts can be like a Travis Kelce type tight end. He's just that athletic, and he's just looks like an incredible tight end. And Bijan Robinson, too, is obviously an elite running back. Bijan Robinson, guys, kind of reminds me a little bit of Dalvin Cook, that Dalvin Cook-Kirk Cousins relationship. So I wouldn't be surprised of seeing Kirk kicking it over there for maybe just a year or something like that. Just kind of coming in there, establishing a culture, seeing if they can win with him, and then if not, you draft a quarterback. They might even still draft a quarterback this year. I don't know, but I think that he's most likely going to go to Atlanta. But keep an eye on a team like the Las Vegas Raiders, too, I would say, because I think that the Raiders, they like Aiden O'Connell, but I don't think they love Aiden O'Connell, and I don't think that they're going to draft a quarterback this year either, so I could see Kirk Cousins maybe going as like a stopgap quarterback, maybe give Aiden O'Connell some extra reps maybe in practice instead of just throwing him out into the fire, and Kirk can go start in Vegas. So,
what do you think they're going to do with Garoppolo?
I think Garoppolo's career at this point is honestly derailed because, I mean, think about it. He's gotten injured so many times in his career already, and he's an older quarterback. Really, if you think about it, that last year he had in San Francisco, like, he wasn't even really supposed to be the starter that year. It was Trey Lance started. Jimmy Garoppolo came in. Obviously, he went down, and that's when Brock Purdy emerged. But Jimmy G wasn't even really supposed to be the starting quarterback that year for the San Francisco 49ers. So teams are kind of giving up on him. And with his injury history, I think that's more – I don't think it's necessarily his play. I think it's his injury history at this point that's going to cause him really just to be kind of thrown out from the Raiders, I would say. So, but, yeah, we'll get into it here in the next one. This is an intriguing one. Josh Allen, Jacksonville Jaguars. So not the Josh Allen that you might hear about every day, the Buffalo Bills superstar quarterback, but superstar in his own right here, the defensive end, Josh Allen for Jacksonville. Incredible season for him this year. I mean, guys, this is kind of a tough one, but I'll let you guys kind of figure out where do you think Josh Allen's going to land?
I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars let Josh Allen leave their building at all this offseason. Here's why. He racked up career highs in pressures with 90, sacks with 19, and had a 20.5% pass rush win rate that ranked among the best in the league. He's one of the most dynamic edge rushers in the NFL, and there's no way the Jaguars can let him go. I believe he resigns there on about a 4-year deal worth up to around $28 to $30 million a year.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think when you're the Jaguars, it's hard to let Josh Allen walk out of your building. I mean, we have him compared to Melvin Ingram here before he signed the free agency deal. Allen, while he was pretty similar in terms of pass rush, his run defense was significantly better, and Melvin Ingram got paid. So I think, especially when you're the Jaguars and you're not consistently good year in and year out, you need a guy like that that'll keep the attention on your team and, you know, hopefully give you some highlights to throw out there. And, you know, potentially put yourself back into contention within a couple years if you rebuild the right way. or if you actually develop Trevor Lawrence. But,
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh Allen's in a unique situation too, guys, where he's young, and that I think that Jacksonville's not going to let him walk. They're going to give him a franchise tag if they can't necessarily come up with a big-time contract. Jacksonville, in my opinion, is not a very smart team if they don't give him a contract extension, like a big contract extension, because that defense has got many holes in Jacksonville. Josh Allen is not one of them. I think that they've thought a lot more about Trayvon Walker. They really want him to kind of be like this top guy. Obviously, he was the number 1 overall draft pick over Aiden Hutchinson, which at the time I thought was a little bit kind of messed up, but then at the same time looked at Walker. He was a raw prospect and kind of thought, hey, maybe he'd develop into something. He hasn't quite developed into that yet. Josh Allen's the best player on the Jaguars defense. I don't think they're going to let him walk, but if he were to walk, a team that I would kind of want him to sign with, and I don't think really anybody's going to be talking about this, the New York Giants, I think, would be a cool team to see him play for. And this is why. Think about it. Kayvon Thibodeau on one side, Josh Allen on another side. Those would be two dynamic defensive ends. I don't know. I don't really think the Giants have necessarily the cap space to make that work potentially. But that's just a thought. I think that would be a cool spot for them. And yes, the Giants would still have many holes, but Josh Allen, Kayvon Thibodeau, something I would personally like to see. So
I think that would make one of the best pass rush duos in the NFL for sure. No doubt about it.
Crazy.
And if the Giants can figure out their quarterback situation with Daniel Jones, he's making about $40 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They have a top pick. I think they should go get a guy like Jaden Daniels. I think he's arguably the closest thing we'll see to Lamar.
Yeah. You think you just got to eat the cap space then with Daniel Jones? Because I doubt anybody will want him on that contract.
I 100% agree. It might have to work out to be like a buyout deal or something like that, or he just sits there. Because I don't think he's their guy for the long-term future.
Tommy DeVito, that's where we're going.
Tommy Cutlets. Tommy Cutlets.
All right, guys, but we're going to go over just two more free agents here. One, T. Higgins, and I know Chris is very excited to give his opinion on this one, but go ahead, T. Higgins.
T. Higgins, come here, baby. I want you in Cleveland. Me and Deshaun want you. I love you, man. You're a baller, bro. We need you over here, bro. So you racked up what? Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. You have 24 career touchdowns. You had those Clemson ties with Deshaun, bro. Come here, man. We need you, T. Imagine you and Amari on the outside, Elijah Moore, David Bell in the slot. That has to be the greatest wide receiver room I've ever seen in my life as a Browns fan. You know what? You get Wayne Ruby Jr. in there, we are talking. I need you here in Cleveland, T. I hope you hear this. I hope this somehow makes your wavelengths. I need you to hear this. Come to Cleveland and win a Super Bowl. You are a baller. You are him. You would be the missing piece of this team that we need right now. Please, T. Please.
I'm all in favor of Kris Jacoby acting as a top recruiter, especially when it comes to the University of Mount Union, specifically with their football program. However, it's not a no. I don't think T. Higgins goes to the Browns. I don't even think that's a possibility. But with that, I also don't think he stays a Bengal. I think Jamar Chase has to be the first priority for them to get him locked up. I don't believe he's on a contract year this year. Maybe the year after. But anyway, regardless, he's going to be right up there with Justin Jefferson as the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. So I don't think there's any way financially you could bring back T. Higgins, regardless of how productive he's been for them.
Yeah, I don't think the Bengals are going to bring back T. Higgins for two reasons. I don't know if you guys were following. A couple weeks ago, Jamar Chase said, when basically asked, hey, should I share some of my money? He said, I'm not sharing my money, basically. And Jamar Chase is about to get paid. He is going to get a lot of money from the Cincinnati Bengals. T. Higgins, kind of injury-related, but also kind of role-related, I feel like fell out with the Bengals here just a little bit this season. And they have Tyler Boyd, which – in that sense, I'm not saying Tyler Boyd's as good as T. Higgins because I don't think he's as good as T. Higgins, but at the same time, he can at least replace T a little bit. I think that, and again, being a Browns fan, I think there's momentum for T. Higgins to come to Cleveland. I do genuinely think he would like to come to Cleveland, play Cincinnati, the team that's like, hey, you didn't pay me, play him 2 times a year, see how that goes. But another one that I think would be kind of interesting to see, and I wouldn't be too surprised, what if he went to the Chicago Bears? Think about it. The Bears are going to have some cap space. They might draft Caleb Williams. Personally, and this could be for another time, I'm not fully convinced they should draft Caleb Williams because I'm a Justin Fields guy. But I do think that DJ Moore on one side, T. Higgins on another side, that's an elite wide receiver duo right there. And whether it is Caleb Williams, whether it is Justin Fields, you can let that offense cook with that. So,
And that's a great idea for Chicago, but I'm with you. I'm a Justin Fields believer. I believe they should draft Marvin Harrison Jr. That's just my personal opinion. But T. Higgins to Cleveland, I want to see it. I want to see a 4-year deal. If we have to give him $23 million a year, so be it. Watson's willing to restructure every year. Myles Garrett, he will restructure, and Nick Chubb. So if you'll get the money, go pay the man.
Just real quick on that, the Bears. They're a team that what I think they started 2-5, something like that. They didn't have a hot start. They got fire towards the end, right? I think they finished 8-9.
yeah. And that's my whole point with Fields is that he got hurt, and yes, obviously he's not playing when he's hurt. When he comes back from the injury, I think he was looking like a pretty solid quarterback, and he's definitely still. You got to give him time to develop. That's what I just can't stand with any of this stuff. You have to let a young quarterback develop, and he was thrown into a terrible situation in Chicago. He's never really had a competent team around him. Now they're starting to build a team. Once they got Montez Sweat on the roster and everything, then I mean the defense turned it around. The offense didn't look that bad this year. When they ran the football, it wasn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, and DJ Moore is an elite wide receiver. So I kind of agree with Chris, but I don't think they'll draft him number 1 overall. I think if they're smart, they trade the number 1 pick again, and then they go back, and Marvin Harrison's still going to be there. Because, in my opinion, 1-2 is going to be something like Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels at 2, or Caleb Williams, Drake May at 2. That's what it's going to be. So,
And I'm hearing, I don't have sources or anything. I'm just going to make this clear. But I have been seeing that there will be around 4 quarterbacks taken within the top 10 and at least 3 in the top 4. Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams.
yeah.
And you got Bo Nix, Michael Penix. And even I've been seeing people say J.J. McCarthy, which that's a whole nother debate.
Mm-hmm.
So
I completely agree, and if I'm Chicago, I'm trying to sell T. Higgins on the fact that he can go to Chicago and elevate them from a team that's on the line of being a playoff contender to actually getting into the playoffs and making some noise.
Yeah, without a doubt. So I know we said we were going to talk about 2 free agents, but we kind of went a little bit over with that one. So we're going to hop on to the head coaches now. A lot of head coaching hirings now, really in the hiring phase of the NFL season. So to go over the hires here, this is how we're going to do it. We're just going to go over the hires and see which ones that you guys think is the best. So the big one, the LA Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, national champion head coach. He gets hired away from Michigan. He's coming back to the NFL after great success with the San Francisco 49ers. The Panthers, they end up hiring Dave Canales. Canales was the offensive coordinator this past season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Saw a big resurgence of Baker Mayfield's play. He's also worked with quarterbacks like Geno Smith, Russell Wilson up in Seattle. So he's got a reputation for working with quarterbacks. The Patriots hired internally with Gerard Mayo. Obviously, they get rid of Bill Belichick in that situation, but Gerard Mayo's been in New England for quite some time, so he's an interesting hire there. The Las Vegas Raiders do what I personally think was the right move. They hire Antonio Pierce. He ended up being the interim coach. When he was tagged as the interim coach, I didn't know how to feel about that, but he obviously was well-liked by the players. They didn't make the same mistake this time, and they end up hiring him. And the Tennessee Titans, they made the move to fire Mike Vrabel after a couple down seasons here. They end up hiring Bill Callahan. He was the offensive coordinator over there for the Cincinnati Bengals. Really worked a lot with that offense that we were just talking about that T. Higgins was involved in. And like how I kind of mentioned earlier here with the Falcons, Raheem Morris was hired as the head coach. Bill Belichick got a couple interviews for this job, but it was Raheem Morris who ended up getting the position here for the Atlanta Falcons. So, guys, who do you think is the best hire from this hiring phase, and just any other general thoughts on some of these hirings?
who do I think was the best hire? As much as I hate to say this, it pains me to say this. Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is a winner. I don't care about the allegations. He's a winner. He led his team to a national championship. He has defeated Ohio State in his last 2 games. I'm not counting this one in the recent year because he was not coaching. He was on a short suspension. But Jim Harbaugh was the best hire, in my opinion, for the Los Angeles Chargers. Having him work with Justin Herbert, who's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, is only going to lead to success. He has Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the outside. Excuse me. It's going to be a perfect match here in Los Angeles, as he's going to build up probably one of the best offenses this league will see in the coming years. Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. That's a star caliber group led by a superstar head coach.
I think Harbaugh is a home run hire for the Chargers, especially when you have Brandon Staley, who truthfully underperformed every year as head coach. But I think it's important to mention Antonio Pierce, I think, may be my true favorite hire because, they had Rich Bisaccia after John Gruden was fired, who did one heck of a job, did a fantastic job, and they let him walk. Or rather, they didn't remove the interim tag, and instead they hired Josh McDaniels, which obviously backfired beyond belief. So, I think for the sake of that culture, Antonio Pierce really seems like a Raiders type guy. I believe he's from Oakland. He's from California at least. He's a tough-nosed, hard-hitting type of guy. He reminds me to an extent of Dan Campbell. So I think that's a great hire for them, especially when you look at how their culture's developed or not developed.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm going where Tom's going with this one. Antonio Pierce, down the stretch, 5-4 as the interim head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders. When you've got a guy like Max Crosby, who is one of the best defensive ends in all of football, saying, if you don't hire this man, I'm going to ask for a trade. You want to hire this man because if everybody in your organization wants to hire him, you go for it. And they did play a very hard-nosed style of football that I think worked out for them in the long run. So I like Antonio Pierce, but I also like Harbaugh. I see what you're saying with that. I think that they're going to be a little bit better, but I think that the Chargers personally still have a long ways to go to kind of being relevant. Justin Herbert's got to really kind of develop even just a little bit more, and I think he will under Harbaugh. But an underrated hiring that I want to say here is honestly Dave Canales, because what I will say about him, yes, he's a first-time head coach being thrown into what I would say is probably the worst-run NFL franchise right now, the Carolina Panthers, and it's an interesting situation with Bryce Young. But I think Bryce Young could develop with a guy like Dave Canales because, again, Baker Mayfield went to Tampa Bay basically as a laughingstock of Tampa Bay is going to be one of the worst teams in the National Football League this year because all they have is Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. All Baker Mayfield did was get himself into the Comeback Player of the Year conversation and take his team to the playoffs, and Dave Canales was a big part of that. So I think that the Panthers have a long ways to go, but Canales, if they give him time, because they didn't give Frank Reich time, obviously, he was fired 11 games in. Give Canales time, allow him to really develop Bryce Young, maybe it'll pay off for Carolina. So
I agree. Definitely agree.
100% agree with that.
But yeah, if we're all good with that, gentlemen, we're going to transition out of the NFL now, and we're going to talk about the National Basketball Association, my personal favorite league here, the NBA. We can talk about some crazy scoring that we've seen this week. So many times in the National Basketball Association, we see some crazy games. You'll see 50-point games, a lot of 40-point games, a lot of 30-point games. You don't necessarily see the numbers that we've been seeing this week from these different NBA players. My apologies. Last night, Luka Doncic dropped 73 points in a game. That tops the scoring from Donovan Mitchell last year and Damian Lillard when they each dropped 71. Coming up 1 point short earlier this week was Joel Embiid dropping 70 points in a win over Victor Wembanyama in the San Antonio Spurs earlier this week. We thought that would be the craziest scoring output that we would see. Both those games resulted in wins. Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns, though, in losing efforts this week, each dropped 62 points. So with that, 4 players scored over 60 points this week, 2 of those guys getting 70 or more. The craziest scoring outburst that we've ever seen in the NBA in one single week. What are you guys thinking about that? Is that good for the NBA? What stood out most to you? What's the best performance of the week?
100% Luka Doncic. 73 points, almost had a triple-double. He shot 25 of 33 from the field, 8 of 13 from 3. He had 10 boards and 7 assists and a steal. It was like all his teammates were like, just pass the ball to Luka there. Towards the end, it seemed like everyone but Luka was taking a shot. But by far, that's the best performance. Luka, he can score from anywhere. I believe he is the best point guard in this league right now. Maybe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that's a debate. Both of those two are in the MVP conversation. But I do want to talk about the performances from Devin Booker and Karl Anthony Towns that resulted in losses. As you can see, you can drop 60 points and still lose a game. This is where stat padding kind of comes into play. I know players have been accused of stat padding before late in games, but their games were close back and forth. I believe those two did all they could to will their team to victories, and their teammates just did not give them enough support to get the win. Now for Joel Embiid, that was just an impressive performance. Joel Embiid seems to be the favorite for MVP again. Yeah, 70 points, 24-41 from the field. He only had 1 3, which is impressive, while scoring 70 points. I believe all the 70-point games, aside from Wilt Chamberlain, which there's no video evidence of, so I hard to believe he scored 100 points.
Well, bro, don't disrespect. I don't
know.
Disrespect
it's
Wilt.
hard to believe.
No,
I think
bro,
he did.
no.
I personally think he did.
Chris.
1 of 2 from 3, and still dropping 70 points and getting 18 boards. Joel Embiid, one of the greatest big men this league has ever seen.
I can agree with that.
Yes, go Sixers. I don't have much to add. Chris pretty much, hit the nail on the head. However, don't you dare disrespect Wilt.
Yeah. Wilt Chamberlain, top 10 NBA player of all time. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I said I believe it's true, but there's been people accusing that it's fake.
All right.
Allegedly. They're wrong.
Yeah, so Chris, you and I have many of the same viewpoints here as well. Lucas is the most impressive, and it's not just because of his scoring. The scoring is the scoring. It was at such an efficient clip, 25 of 33 from the floor. That's insane. But also when you add 10 rebounds, 7 assists, the high usage rate that Luka Doncic has, and he really carried his team to victory against the Atlanta Hawks. No Kyrie Irving in that matchup. He played 45 of 48 minutes. That is just insane right there from Luka Doncic. That was definitely the best performance of the week. Joel Embiid's obviously very dominant as well with the 70 points. But I want to talk more again about Cat and Devin Booker, those 62-point games. My apologies there. What that's showing is that this scoring is great, but it's also horrible at the same time, because this is what I'll say. Devin Booker's isn't as bad as Karl Anthony Towns'. Devin Booker dropped 62. It's just the rest of his team did not play any defense. They score 131 points and you lose a basketball game. That's not good for the NBA unless you, of course, love offense. If you love offense, that's incredible. I miss the days back when LeBron was in his first go-around with the Cavs where you had the nail-biter games where it was like 97-95. Those defensive battles, those were really cool to me. And then even now, Karl Anthony Towns' I don't know if you guys saw this as well. Chris Finch, the head coach for the Minnesota Timberwolves, ripped into Karl Anthony Towns even after he dropped 62 points because Karl Anthony Towns was not playing any defense in the fourth quarter. He had 44 points at halftime. He had 18 in the second half, and that's just because he simply was, like how you said, Chris, guys tend to stat pad. That's at that point what Cat was trying to do in that game. He shot 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter. When you're shooting that bad in the fourth quarter and you lose to one of the worst teams in the NBA, mind you, as well, in the Charlotte Hornets, that's just atrocious right there. So Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker losing with those 60-point games, that's horrible for the league because that's showing there's absolutely no defense right now being played. And I think that's a bad look for the NBA. What makes the playoffs so good, the teams actually start to play defense. And it's awesome when you see that because it's actual competitive basketball. It's none of this, hey, I'm going to run down the court. Karl Anthony Towns, shoot a 35-foot three right here. And if you make it, oh my gosh, you're incredible. And if not, you're like the worst player known to man. So these performances are amazing. Luka Doncic's is one of the most incredible displays that I've ever seen in an NBA game. Fun fact, I was at that Donovan Mitchell 71-point game, and that was the craziest thing ever to witness. I can only imagine what it would have been if Luka Doncic is almost dropping a triple-double with 73. But I will say, every single one of them, impressive scoring outbursts, but what it's showing me is that the NBA is going further away from defense, and that's not a good look for the league because as you can see, 62-point games, those should go down as legendary performances. They're not because they were losses. We care about the wins. We don't care about the losses.
And like you just mentioned with Timberwolves head coach Chris Finch, his comments after the game, calling it an absolute disgusting performance of defense and immature basketball. I mean, there's a lot of times when just because you scored 2 or 3 or 4 points in a row or baskets in a row, obviously we're going to try to feed a hot hand, look for a hot hand. But at some point, we got to get back to making the right play. We got to get back to doing the right things. Having a night like that on a loss doesn't feel very good or historic. I think Finch hit that right on the head right there.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, and in that article too, it says, this is not to discredit Cat at all. He's 21 for 35 from the floor. That's insane. 10 for 15 from downtown. Just insane numbers, especially when you consider the fact that he's 7 foot. That's even crazier that he hit 10 3-pointers as a big man. But at the same time, you're 2 for 10 in the fourth quarter, man, and the game's starting to get away from you. That is immature basketball, in my opinion. So I agree with what Chris Finch is saying with that. But great performances, very, very awesome to kind of see the league with those big performances. But we'll see where it goes. We're going to talk now a little bit here about the NBA standings, which my man Chris is bringing up here. Right now, as we are recording this podcast, the Boston Celtics are in the lead in the Eastern Conference. They're at 35-10, right behind them, the Milwaukee Bucks, 31-14. Philadelphia 76ers, 29-14. A little bit of separation between those three squads. And then it's a big cluster right there when we talk about the play-in and everything with that nature. New York Knicks, 29-17, half a game up on the Cleveland Cavaliers at 27-16. The Indiana Pacers, 26-20. And then the Miami Heat, just 2 games back, 24-22. Orlando Magic, 23-22. Following them then is the Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks, Brooklyn Nets, Toronto Raptors, Charlotte Hornets, Washington Wizards, Detroit Pistons. Thoughts on the Eastern Conference right now, gentlemen?
Eastern Conference is loaded, and those Cavs, man, those Cavs are red hot. Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, ballers. But my thoughts are Boston, no one's getting through Boston this year. They're that deep. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, I don't think anyone's getting through those. Through those guys. Boston's going to run the East this year. That's my prediction. But Milwaukee with Doc Rivers, I don't know how I feel about Doc Rivers. He does not have a good track record in the playoffs besides his 1 ring in 2008.
As a Sixers fan, I know how I feel about Doc Rivers.
See, Mr. Tom Dry knows how to feel about Doc Rivers.
It's not going to end well for Milwaukee. Another second-round loss. Wow. I know a thing or two about that in Rivers' 3 years as head coach of the 76ers.
But overall, my thoughts, Eastern Conference is great. I mean, there's a drop-off when we get to the Bulls. I think the top 8 is what we're going to see with the Magic being the 8 seed. I think the Cavs will end up getting a top 4 or 3 seed the way they're playing right now. And once they get Darius Garland and Evan Mobley back, we'll get cooking. But we'll talk about here on the next segment more about that. But I want to talk about the Indiana Pacers. When Tyrese Halliburton gets back from injury, they have OG Anunoby, Buddy Hield.
Well, no, they don't have OG. You're thinking Pascal Siakam. You're thinking
Pascal,
yeah.
My bad.
No, you're good.
I was thinking of the Knicks.
Yeah,
all right,
good.
I meant to talk about the Knicks. All right. I want to talk about them too, but the Pacers, Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner. Indiana's going to be a fun team to watch here. They're going to be a fun team to watch for a long time. I think they're doing the right things, getting the right players, putting the pieces together. And the Knicks, Jalen Brunson should have been an all-star starter.
Should have been an all-star starter, yeah.
Jalen Brunson is having an amazing year. Now they have the best 3-and-D wing in OG Anunoby. That's who I wanted to talk about. OG Anunoby is probably the best move that the Knicks could have possibly made, pairing him up with Julius Randle. And Mitchell Robinson is unfortunately out for the year. But the Knicks, they have a nice squad. They're pretty deep. And their team, I could see making an Eastern Conference Finals run as well.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree with that. You know, I'm more of a Sixers fan than I am a overall basketball fan. But, yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that the top 5 is going to stay the top 5 as far as teams go. Seeding-wise, I wouldn't be surprised if the top 3, there's some changes where I would say, and this might sound crazy, and I understand the Doc Rivers slander. I completely agree with it at times. But the Milwaukee Bucks have Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. They're going to figure it out. I think that they can potentially go up with the Boston Celtics. Potentially. I'm not saying they're going to. But
we had Joel Embiid.
You did have Joel Embiid, but respectful to
MVP.
Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Respectful to Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. Giannis Antetokounmpo is the most well put together and best basketball player in the world right now, I think. I think Jokic is right behind him, and then you got Joel Embiid probably there as well. Still credit LeBron too. LeBron's top 5. I think LeBron's top 5 still in the NBA. But we'll get into the West here in a second. But I think the top 3 are going to remain the top 3. It just could be the seeding, but I don't see Philly going up any higher than 3 personally. So I guess I would say more top 2. The Knicks and the Cavs are going to stay in the top 5 too. I wouldn't be surprised if they flip-flop. I don't think the Cavs are going to catch up to Philly. I just don't. I mean, I could see it, but I don't fully believe it just yet. And then when it gets to 6 to 8, I think that's where it gets interesting. I agree with you, Chris. I think the top 8 are going to remain the top 8. I wouldn't be surprised if Orlando doesn't do any movement, but Miami, don't ever count out Miami. They showed us that last year. They might flip-flop with Indiana. Indiana's going to be a very fun team to watch, though, I agree. But now we'll go into the West here very quickly. So the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves tied at the top right now, 32-13. If anybody would have told you that 45 games into the season and you would have believed it, I would have said you probably should have put $1 million on it in Vegas because there's no way that anybody thought that was going to happen.
No way.
And then you got the LA Clippers. They've been red hot, 29-14. The Denver Nuggets, the defending NBA champions, are in 4th right now, 31-15. It's just basically a percentage point thing at this point. And then you got the Sacramento Kings in 5th, 25-18. Phoenix Suns in 6th, 26-19. Then you start to get into the play-in teams. The Pelicans are at 26-19. The Mavericks 25-20. The Lakers right now 23-23 with the Utah Jazz just outside the play-in. Houston Rockets just a game behind. The Golden State Warriors just 2 games behind. Then you got the Memphis Grizzlies, Portland Trailblazers, San Antonio Spurs. The wild, wild West. What are we thinking right now about it?
The Thunder and Timberwolves are 2 of the youngest and most exciting teams in the league. That's all I got to say. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the Oklahoma City Thunder and Anthony Edwards for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But my team that I really want to look out and talk about is the Los Angeles Clippers. They have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who are both top 10 players when healthy. Russell Westbrook is looking like a 6th Man of the Year candidate. They have Norman Powell, who's looking like a 6th Man of the Year candidate. The LA Clippers, they should have really won the title like 4 or 5 years ago if it wasn't for the COVID year. In my opinion, I feel like they were going to win that year. Now that they're healthy, their championship window is closing. Their guys are aging. They have James Harden now. Mm-hmm. They need to go out and get this ring. They need it. They're hungry for it. I think the Clippers will come out of the West, and I think they will finish the 1 seed. The Nuggets, I think they'll finish the top 2 seed. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, you can't count those 2 out at all. The Kings, they're an exciting team to watch, led by De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. And the Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, but they lack depth. They legitimately have arguably the worst defensive, they're the worst defensive team in basketball. I just got to say that right now. And they have no depth at all. I don't think Phoenix is built to make a playoff run. I believe they're a 1st round or 2nd round exit. Maybe 2nd round just because they have all those stars. I don't think they're going to get the job done. What's surprising me right now is the Golden State Warriors being all the way down to the 12th seed. I just don't get how they're that low, led by Steve Kerr. Mm-hmm. They've never been that low this late in the season in, maybe 10 years?
Well, this is why they're that low, because you got Draymond Green with his suspension. That killed them. Draymond Green, I can't stand Draymond Green, but he is without a doubt the heart and soul of that team. I know Steph's the best player on that team, but Draymond is the heart and soul of that team. When you take the heart and soul away from your team, I mean, you're not going to really recover from that. They don't have any size either. That's personally why. Klay Thompson, big-time regression this year. Andrew Wiggins as well. They got a lot of problems on that team, so I'm not too surprised seeing them at 12. Tom, what are you thinking?
I kind of agree with the other two touched on previously with the Clippers. I think if they finally, fire on all cylinders, they can beat just about anybody in the West and make a deep run into the finals. But we'll see. I've seen how Harden plays in Game 7s. It's not fun.
That's a straight of Harden.
I'm taking shots because I'm tired of underperforming every year. But, still, go Sixers.
How we feel about the Lakers? They're 23-23. They turned it up at the deadline last year, made some great moves, but can you really do that back-to-back years?
Well, that's what I'm getting into here. So if I had to rank them, I personally think the Clippers and the Nuggets are the 2 best teams in the Western Conference right now. I think that they are on a collision course to potentially meet in the conference finals. But here's the thing, going back to with Tom, I have no confidence in James Harden whatsoever when it comes to the playoffs. I have an overwhelming confidence in Kawhi Leonard, though, because Kawhi Leonard, in my opinion, is one of the clutchest basketball players that you'll ever see. His Toronto Raptors championship solidifies that. And even his performance last year in the playoffs before he got hurt again kind of shows that as well. They took the Suns to the brink right there, and I really do believe that if Kawhi was in that series, it's a different outcome. I think the Clippers might have won that series. Phoenix, to me, I just don't trust them because of really Bradley Beal. I mean, and they blew up the team, to be completely honest. They're an interesting one because you have Bradley Beal, you have Devin Booker, you have Kevin Durant. On paper, you are a great basketball team, but I do not know if I fully believe them to go super far into the playoffs. But the Lakers, though, I do believe they're going to make a move. I'm never discounting LeBron James at all. And I just don't understand how they're 23-23. When I was watching them in the in-season tournament, they looked like they were going to go run away to the NBA Finals, and now they're just not very good. But they're starting to right the ship a little bit. They're 6-4 in their last 10, 23-23 overall again on the year. It's going to be tough. I think they're going to be in the play-in regardless, but whoever's playing them outside of the play-in, I mean, ask the Memphis Grizzlies from last year. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers win. But since we are here from Northeast Ohio, we're going to transition here to one final thing about the NBA. We'll talk about it quickly. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they are 9-1 in their last 10 games. It makes no sense when you think about it. Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, who are two of the best players on the Cavs. Darius Garland's averaging 20.7 points per game. Evan Mobley's averaging 16 and 10.5 rebounds per game. They're both out. But the Cavs are playing their best basketball, arguably, of the Donovan Mitchell era so far. 9-1 in their last 10. Like how we mentioned, they're sitting in 4th place now in the Eastern Conference, 27-16. Can the Cavs keep this up, and what are we thinking about the run?
100% they can keep this up. Right now they're led by Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen, 2 All-Stars who I believe should be and will be All-Star reserves. Donovan Mitchell should be the first or second guard.
Donovan will be. I don't know about Jarrett.
Jarrett, he deserves the spot.
He deserves.
But I don't know if he'll get
deserving.
enough recognition from the media and the other players across the league.
Yeah.
Jared Allen has had 15 straight double-doubles, I believe, which is a team record. And Donovan Mitchell, he's averaging nearly 28 a game. And he's one of the most dynamic guards, arguably the best shooting guard in the league. But when you're going to talk about guys who stepped up for this team, you got to talk about Isaac Okoro. Isaac Okoro, he only averages 8.5 points a game, but he hasn't really come on from the three-point line. He's shooting about 36% from three this year. He's showing that he can finally knock those jumpers down, but they're letting him use his athleticism. They're letting him drive to the basket. They're letting him play make. They're letting Isaac Okoro develop into, arguably, I would say he is by far the top 3 on-ball defender, but offensively, they're letting him develop into a quality player. I believe he deserves an extension. I believe he's been the key piece of the success. And they have a guy like Sam Merrill who's knocking down threes, taking about 8 a game. Then George Niang, who has the weirdest shot form, but is somehow just on an amazing run right now in January, contributing as one of the best bench players in all the NBA. Then they have Karis LeVert, who is in the running for 6th Man of the Year, and Dean Wade, who has really looked like the Dean Wade we saw before he got hurt last year.
Tom, you got any thoughts on this one?
Not really. Could care less about the Cavs.
Hey, okay. As a diehard Cleveland Cavalier fan, I take high offense to that. But
Go Sixers.
I mean, this is what I'll say about the Cavs. This run is incredible, and I love it. But the key to the Cavs sustaining this run when Darius Garland and Evan Mobley can't come back are 2 guys, in my opinion. It's going to be Max Strus and George Niang. They were brought into Cleveland for a reason. They got to knock down timely threes. And as far as Strus goes, don't expect defense from George Niang. George Niang, that's not his specialty. He's not a good defender. No. Max Strus, though, can be a big defender. I think Sam Merrill's going to stay consistent throughout the year. I hope that they find minutes for him in the rotation as well as the year goes on, because he's been the biggest surprise for me this season. When he was on the roster, I was kind of saying that's a waste of a roster spot at the beginning of the year. Then now he's one of the better three-point shooters in the NBA. Reminds me a lot of one of my favorite basketball players of all time, and he had a cup of coffee with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Kyle Korver. Reminds me a lot. Quick release from Kyle Korver and everything. That's like Sam Merrill too. So, I mean, the Cavs key, they need to feed the ball down low inside to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. What Jared Allen's showing you is, hey, maybe I shouldn't be getting 6 or 7 shots per game. Maybe I should be getting more like 16 or 17. So make sure Jarrett still gets his touches when DG and Mobley come back, and then you got to make sure that the three-point shooting is still going at that high volume. That's been the key to this run. Donovan Mitchell's been incredible. A lot of other guys have been incredible, but really it's been the three-point shooting and Jared Allen going down low. I am a little worried when DG and Evan Mobley come back how it's going to fit, because obviously rotations, chemistry's been established without them. So I'm a little bit worried. I wouldn't be surprised if they regress a little bit. Donovan also got a little bit injured at the end of that Bucks game last night too. Tweaked his groin, it looked like a little bit from just that vantage point. No confirmation if he's going to be playing yet next week. I wouldn't be surprised if he sits out a game or two just for precautionary reasons, but we'll see how it goes. The Cavs, though, definitely are starting to be the team that I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be a top 4 team, and they're obviously in 5th right now, but they can very well as easily be in that 4th position. But the three-point shooting from the guys that you signed to be three-point shooters, that's going to be the key for them the rest of the season. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and when they get Mobley and Garland back, like you said, there will be rotation problems, but I think that's where it's just going to depend on the matchup. Once Thompson is back from suspension, but right now they're using Jones, but let's just refer to when Thompson is back too. It's just going to depend on when they need size, but when they need shooting, you're going to see more of Sam Merrill, Dean Wade, who has really come along from downtown as of late.
Yeah.
Shout out Dean Wade.
Yeah. I personally don't think when Tristan comes back that he's going to really be in the rotation full on, because I think it's going to be, obviously, you're going to get your starting 5 of DG, Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, as well as Max Strus in that lineup. But then your bench, it's got to be Okoro. It's got to be George Niang. You got to get Karis LeVert in there. Like how I said, please give Sam Merrill minutes. I think Sam Merrill's going to get some minutes. TT might sneak in there as a potential second big man, but they really do like playing Dean Wade, so I wouldn't be surprised if Dean Wade operates as that second big man. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go make a move for a trade or a buyout candidate, kind of sign some front court depth. They still have that roster spot, which I hope goes to Craig Porter Jr. personally.
Yes.
But Pete Nance's contract is going to be expiring here as well with that 10-day. You just pulled up Royce O'Neal. Royce O'Neal wouldn't be a bad option.
That's a great wing piece for the bench right there.
Mm-hmm.
More consistent shooting from downtown, and he's a great defender. Yeah. I mean, that's 2-1.
Personally, yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I would like to see them get a little bit more size. Damian Jones, I was very intrigued by him at the beginning of the year, and he's just not fully kind of panned out like how I thought he would. But we shall see what they get. DeAndre Hunter bringing that up too. That could potentially be one. So
Cavs are reportedly interested in DeAndre Hunter, but he is making $20 million a year. So
figuring
figuring that out would be a little bit interesting.
Yeah, for sure. But that'll do it here for the NFL and NBA talk, guys. We're gonna do a last call right here. So one final question, just to kind of end things off here. So the one I cooked up right before we got on this thing.
We have not seen this, by the way.
Not seen it. So NIL, that's the big thing now with college sports. A lot of guys transfer back and forth and everything. If you were a college athlete, what NIL deal would you want to get the most? Like, who do you want coming after you for an NIL deal?
Gianninos.
Hey, shout out Gianninos.
Those Ohio State boosters who are laying it out right now for like Caleb Downs and Quinjon Jukins.
The Bama Collective.
The Bama Collective is also crazy.
That Columbus Collective, though, that Ohio State, man, Columbus, they're paying right now. They spent over $13 million in NIL.
See, yeah, and that's where I think NIL is kind of going out of control. Like, I mean, it's a great every college athlete should be compensated in some way, shape, or form, but NIL is crazy right now. I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, truthfully, not to sound like an old guy or Nick Saban, I don't think it's great for the game, truthfully. I agree there should be certainly some form of compensation.
Yeah,
because there's very few humans in the world that can play football or play any sport to a high level. But I think it gets to a point where there's guys in college making more than players in the NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that just I don't get it. But
yeah. But that's a topic for another day. Episode 0 is what we're calling this one, gentlemen, because kind of just came up with it right on the spur of the moment.
The reboot.
Yeah, we had nothing planned out, so it was a little bit rough at some points, but we figured it out.
We did. We figured it out, and we are glad that we were here, Raider Zone Podcast, hoping to do a few more of these as it rolls on. So for Tom Dry, for Kris Jacoby, I'm Jacob Buttar. We're signing off here from Raider Zone. Have a great one.